Welcome back, guys. Thanks again for tuning in. This week's video is actually probably going to kick off a new playlist or series on my channel because I have not yet shared too much of my personal background or experience with sight loss. So I thought maybe over the next couple of months I will upload here and there my journey and experience and perspective and reflect back, I guess, on the different phases of life and how blindness has impacted them. So I'm going to start from the very beginning today. I began losing my vision at age 5. I am actually one of those that recall quite a bit of my early childhood. So I'm going to reflect back and just, discuss the different feelings and how I coped. So let's get started and have this discussion of losing eyesight as a young child. As I mentioned, yes, I started losing my vision around age 5, give or take. I was in kindergarten. At the time, I was in a private school that did not have eye exams. So when I expressed to my mom that I wasn't really seeing some of the things that other people were describing, or just things would come up in conversations, and I noticed my eyesight was not the same as everyone else's, we made an appointment at my local eye doctor, which, looking back, he was terrible. Oh my gosh. He clearly had no experience with young kids or detecting any eye conditions. I was not really nervous or fearful of the appointment. I remember, I was pretty relaxed as a child in general. I was pretty practical, not very high anxiety. So I just thought that, hey, maybe I'll get some cool, cute glasses or something and that'll fix it and that'll be it. So I went to the eye doctor and it was terrible. He, started the exam as usual. And I remember this vividly, guys, it was that dramatic. He would, of course, bounce an image off a mirror in the back in front of me on the wall, and I had to identify what the image was, which I couldn't. I couldn't identify any of the images. And looking back, that was, my blind spot that is common to Stargardt's disease, which is, by the way, what I'm diagnosed with is Stargardt's disease. But it's known for the blind spot, and that's what was going on. I did not have enough detail to make out what that image was. And so I remember he would flip through the images, over and over and over, and I could sense his frustration level getting higher and higher and higher. And I just remember sitting there feeling like I'm doing my best. I felt confused because I'm like, okay, am I supposed to be able to see these images? But, and I remember trying my best and just feeling really self-conscious about it. He pretty much ended the exam not long after that. He did not dilate my eyes. He did not look at my retina or anything like that, which if he had, he would have immediately seen why I could not make out those images, but he didn't. Instead, at the end of the exam, guys, he pretty much flat out called me a liar, and he told my mom to bring me back when I was ready to participate and to fully engage and not tell fibs. So he dismissed her and her concerns and me, and that was it. I left feeling so confused and defeated. I didn't understand anything. I was like, I don't understand. Was I supposed to see those images? Like, why did he call me a liar? And I was completely being honest and doing my best. So that was my first experience on my sight loss journey, and it was the most traumatic. It was not all the doctor and tests and things that I had later. It was that experience that impacted me negatively the most. In fact, it was a year or more after that before we actually went to the eye doctor again, because it was starting to impact my education. I could no longer see the board at school. The teachers were beginning to notice, like, okay, there's a major issue going on. I was also not reading doing schoolwork at the speed I was supposed to. So they were testing me for learning disabilities, everything. So when we went to the second eye doctor, of course, he immediately detected that my retina was not what it should be, and that started the whole, gamut of specialist after specialist, test after test that many of us in the VIP world can relate to. However, as a young child, looking back, of course, I did not like the doctors or the tests. They were very uncomfortable, and of course, that wasn't fun. However, it did get me out of school, and I hated school. I struggled. I could sense that I was not having the same experiences as my peers. And so these doctor appointments and tests got me out of school. And so that made me extremely willing to participate. And sure, I wanted to know what was going on. I wanted answers too. I was young. I was at this age 6 or 7 and still thinking that there's a fix-it, right? And I just wanted things to be normal. Technology has changed so much, guys. I would add that, back then, this was 30 plus years ago, we did not have genetic testing like we do now. We did not, have all the equipment and, the imagery, the ease of taking, images of the retina back then as we do now. So I actually had like 2 or 3 different diagnoses at age 6, 7, 8 before they landed on Stargardt's disease. I think one of them was like Cone-Rod's dystrophy, just all kinds of various retinal dystrophy type of diagnoses. And, as a child, I remember not feeling too scared, I guess. I mean, I was very anxious, and I was very confused what was going on. And I didn't understand, though, what it meant for the rest of my life. That's kind of where my understanding stopped. I kept thinking, okay, there's a fix-it, right? So through those first initial years, so I would say age 5, 6, 7, and maybe a little bit of 8, I was, for the most part, not as emotionally impacted as I was after age 8. 9, 10, 11, 12, that's when things started getting real. I became more concerned with my image and became more self-conscious and started realizing that my life experiences were not going to be the same as my friends and peers and family. So prior to age 8, I don't really, have memories of really feeling sad and depressed and sensing the seriousness of it. However, at age 9, yes, I do have memories of how real and serious I was starting to grasp the situation. One memory I have and remember vividly is I was around 9 or 10. My sister and my brother were both having kids. And don't freak out because they're like 16 and 19 years older than me. So, I'm the baby of my family, and they were married, when I was 6. So by the time I was like 9, 10, they were expecting their first. And I remember praying so hard one night that my niece or nephew would not have my eye condition. And I remember bawling. And I remember it being the first time that I seriously was fearful and anxious, and I was beginning to kind of see my whole life in front of me with this impairment. And I was really starting to grasp that there is no fix-it. And everyone was kind of at that time understanding that there was a genetic component, so they were going through family histories and records and asking old family members. if anyone had, similar eye conditions, that kind of thing. And so I knew that there was a chance that, okay, this means my niece and nephew could have it. That was a concern. And so I just remember being heavily, heavily impacted, and it was breaking my heart to think that any other family member was going to go through what I was going through. So, 9, 10, and 11 were very difficult years, and they got more and more difficult, exceedingly so as I got older. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next video, approaching teenage years. So, but yeah, I really struggled at 9, 10, and 11 because I was sensing those differences. The enlarged print textbooks that I was getting in the private school, at first when I was like 7, 8, I didn't mind them so much because it was another thing that made me special in a way. I was looking at it pretty innocently. I wasn't concerned about the image of it and self-consciousness about it. I wasn't too concerned. But when I got to age 9 and 10, it wasn't so cool anymore. And I really began to notice all of those little differences adding up. So now let's move on to communication. I was terrible at communicating, and I kind of still am to this day. But, I think a lot of kids are. And to be fair, communication is kind of a learned skill. So my parents, they did not talk too much about what was going on. I don't recall any really serious sit-down conversations or anything like that. I was present during doctor's appointments, and that's where I got my information just as much as them. And it's not that I couldn't go to them with any questions, or it's not that I couldn't talk to them, but it's just not what we did. And I frankly just didn't know how. So through, these young childhood years, I never really spoke up much. I never learned how to advocate for myself. I never spoke about struggles or what I found difficult or not. And a lot of the times I remember thinking that I didn't want to because I didn't want to upset my parents. And I also did not want to stand out as being more different than my peers and my friends. You just, even as a young child, you want to fulfill that sense of belonging. So because of that, I didn't really speak up much. Another factor in this is that, yes, I was losing vision pretty quickly, but it was not fast enough, on a week-to-week basis, for me to be able to notice the change, drastically enough. I wouldn't wake up one day and realize, oh, my vision is different when I go outside or when I look across the room, kind of thing. It happened just slowly enough, and I think that it's a pro to losing vision at a young age because your body and your brain rapidly and naturally adapt. And my eyes were adjusting and they were adapting as my vision decreased, so much so that when people asked me, and I got this question often when I was young, is your vision changing? Do you feel like it's worse? Has it gotten any better? The whole gamut of questions along those lines I remember getting all the time, and I never had a good answer. It was because, my brain was filling in the blanks, the eye muscles, all of that stuff. It happens unconsciously, right? We're not aware of how we adapt. Even, when you're losing vision fairly quickly. Now, I would not use the word rapidly. I know there are many in the VIP community, especially with Libras, that lose it really, really quickly. So I would not describe mine as rapid, though it was a quick loss through, my childhood years. So, I really struggled with the communication part. I just did not know how to describe it. And I did not know how to communicate and advocate and all that jazz. If that's something that you can relate to, let me know in the comment section. I know a lot of parents struggle with this component. I've heard them ask me and ask on some of our blind VIP forums on Facebook and things like that, oh, my child, they don't tell me when they're struggling, or they don't speak up when they need something, or blah blah blah. And I'm like, gosh, that's normal, because we don't know and we don't want to rock the boat, and we don't want to differ ourselves from the norm. It's just part of the journey, and that's a two-way street. And parents, check in with them. If they don't offer up any communication, ask them a question. And if they don't have an answer, that's okay, but still they know that you are curious and that door is open. I have another video, guys, that discusses this, so I will make sure I link that in the cards as well as in the description box below, so you can check that out, my tips and advice for parents of visually impaired children. Check out some more of my other playlists and videos, which will pop up around on the screen, as well as in the description box. So thanks for watching. Take care.